In the Beginning by Dr. Walt Brown, page 225, The Origin of the Grand Canyon. Summary. Geologists now admit that they do not know how the Grand Canyon formed, but for the last 140 years, they have insisted that the Colorado River carved the canyon over millions of years and somehow removed the evidence. However, some so-called experts admit that the canyon's birth remains a hazy mystery, cloaked in intrigue and filled with enigmatic puzzles. After studying those puzzles, we will examine the 8 main explanations for the Grand Canyon's origin and see why almost all experts reject them. Finally, we will consider 2 former post-flood lakes, Grand Lake and Hopi Lake, that several centuries after the flood breached their boundaries and carved the Grand Canyon in weeks. This explanation not only unravels the confusion, but solves the other major puzzles not previously associated with the Grand Canyon. For a quick explanation, see figure 125 on page 230. The Grand Canyon is the best and most famous earth science laboratory in the world. Although a few canyons are deeper or longer or steeper or wider, no other canyon on Earth can compare with the Grand Canyon's scenic variety, massiveness, beauty, and three-dimensional exposure. It is 216 miles long, 4 to 18 miles wide, and about a mile deep. Writers correctly describe the canyon in such lofty terms as magnificent, majestic, stupendous, inspirational, breathtaking, awesome, the most sublime and awe-inspiring spectacle in the world, and Earth's greatest natural wonder. The first reaction of most of the 6 million annual visitors to the canyon is stunned silence. Probably the foremost question visitors have is, how did this happen? What formed the Grand Canyon? Bruce Babbitt, former governor of Arizona and U.S. Secretary of Interior, relates the answer given by John Hance. In 1883, Hance became the first white settler in the Grand Canyon. He was one of the canyon's most colorful personalities, tour guides, and explorers. Children loved John Hance, and to them he always explained how the canyon came into being. I dug it, he would simply say. This story worked well for years until a little 4-year-old girl asked him seriously, "And where did you put the dirt?" Hans had no ready answer. He never used that story again, but it bothered him the rest of his life. And when he was dying, he whispered to his waiting friends, "Where do you suppose I could have put that dirt?" That question still haunts geologists because if the Colorado River carved the canyon, as is commonly assumed, that dirt would have formed a gigantic river delta where the Colorado River enters the Gulf of California. Instead, the delta is tiny, certainly compared to the vast volume of sediments removed to form the canyon. Okay, let's go to figure 125 on page 230. Going to page 230, and that's going to be a quick puzzles not previously associated with the canyon. For a quick explanation, on page 230, figure 125, here it is. Grand Canyon, North Rim, location, okay. Figure 125, Grand Canyon in 3D. The Colorado River lies below the dashed blue line. Obviously, a river did not carve all the randomly oriented drainage channels to make up the Grand Canyon. Dashed blue line. Okay, there it is. Rise. Okay, that's where the Grand Canyon is. Much more water was involved, and yet for 150 years, the public has been told that the Colorado River carved the canyon over millions of years. No wonder that explanation has so many recognized problems, even in the eyes of the so-called experts. Surface water typically flows downhill. However, the flow of subsurface water depends in part on the location of faults and other subsurface drainage channels. Sediments deposited on the continents by the flood averaged more than a mile in depth all over the earth. Each grain that settled through the muddy floodwaters helped trap water between the loosely packed grains. When the flood ended, approximately 20% of the floodwater was temporarily held between sedimentary grains, seeking ways to escape to the surface. Water that did escape accounts for many of today's land features, including much of the Grand Canyon. The dashed yellow line shows part of the 60-mile long Bright Angel Fault. The yellow line. Bright Angel Fault. Okay. As figure 149 on page 257 explains, the west side of this vertical fault, a deep fracture, rose 200 feet higher than the east side, allowing subsurface water to escape out of the freshly exposed 200-foot high cliff face and up to the fault. Erosion carved the prominent Bright Angel Side Canyon, the location of the famous Bright Angel Trail. Hundreds of less spectacular faults account for hundreds of other variously oriented valleys and side canyons that allow escaping subsurface water to drain to the deepest channel, where the Colorado River now flows. In other words, Grand and Hopi Lakes water eroded the canyon first, then the region's natural drainage created to Colorado's river, just the opposite of what most geologists and national park rangers tell us. Grand Canyon. In the Beginning by Dr. Walt Brown.